Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to stand with those brave military personnel who have suffered from sexual misconduct within our Canadian Armed Forces. Their courage in coming forward has exposed systematic failures that have persisted far too long, and these failures demand our unwavering attention and action. Let me be clear from the very onset, Conservatives unequivocally support victims of sexual misconduct. We believe they deserve justice, transparency, and a workplace free of harassment, discrimination, and abuse of power. This is not a partisan issue. It is about honoring the service of those in uniform and ensuring their safety and dignity. But, Mr. Speaker, while victims deserve justice, they have been let down time and again, not just by individuals, but the very government charged with protecting them. The Liberal government has had a full decade to address these issues and has repeatedly failed Canadians and members of our armed forces. We must ask, why should Canadians, and especially those in uniform, trust this government? We saw one glaring example when the former Minister of National Defence, Harjit Sajjan, was complicit in covering up the sexual misconduct allegations against the former Chief of Defence Staff, General Jonathan Vance. When Sajjan was presented with evidence, he refused to accept it. Not only that, but Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was also complicit in this cover-up for 3 long years. These were years of silence and inaction while victims waited for justice. Let us remember that the Justice Deschamps report commissioned under the previous Conservative government was delivered in 2015 with clear recommendations to tackle sexual misconduct. Yet the Liberals sat on this report, leaving it to gather dust while the problems festered. Fast forward years later, what do we see? The government finally brings forward Bill C-11, but only after a decade of delay, and only when political cover became necessary. The bill, while containing some positive changes, raises more questions than it answers, and introduces concerns about political interference that could further harm victims and service members alike. Mr. Speaker, national defense is not just about tanks, planes, and ships. It's about people, brave men and women who put on the uniform every day to protect our country. They deserve respect and protection. We must invest not only in their equipment and training, but in creating a military culture free of harassment and misconduct. But, Mr. Speaker, how can we expect a culture of accountability and readiness when this very government continues to neglect funding, equipping, and modernizing our equipment? Let me remind the House. The Royal Canadian Navy is operating decades-old warships well past their prime. Our Royal Canadian Air Force flies 40-year-old CF-18s past their operational lifespan, while the government has dithered with the replacement. The Canadian Army lacks basic resources, from personal protective equipment to modern artillery. There has been reports of soldiers buying their own equipment, and training has been cancelled due to budget cuts. Meanwhile, Canada remains well below NATO's 2% defense spending target. And defense, as far as recruitment, where the Canadian Armed Forces is facing 16,000 personnel shortfall. Mr. Speaker, the first responsibility of the federal government is the protection of Canada and those who serve us. We face a rapidly changing global threat environment, from Russia's invasion of Ukraine to the instability in the Middle East and growing tensions in Indo-Pacific. Our military must be strong, prepared, and respected, and this includes having a justice system that is fair and trusted. Conservatives fully support transferring jurisdiction of most sexual offenses committed in Canada from the military justice system to civilian authorities, as has been recommended by respected Deschamps, Arbor, and Fish reports. Unfortunately, this is not a reality. Our civilian courts are under-resourced, and overwhelmed. Court delays are rampant, and victims of sexual assault often see their cases dismissed or delayed under Jordan's principle, which forces charges to be stayed if trials are not being held in a reasonable time frame. This means adding further trauma and uncertainty to survivors. According to the testimony heard in the Status of Women Committee, only a tiny fraction of the reported sexual assault cases ever lead to convictions. And even then, penalties are minimal. Victims deserve justice free from political gamesmanship, and the accused deserve a fair and impartial process. Let me remind the House about the handling of Jonathan Vance's case. Despite credible allegations, the government gave Vance a raise while investigating his wrongdoing. There was clear signals to victims that their suffering was secondary to political expediency. Moreover, the Defense Committee, which should have been the forum for accountability, was suspended for months amid liberal filibustering, preventing proper oversight and investigation. The government's pattern of delay, of denial, of shielding high-ranking officials, and of stalling justice cannot be ignored. We have heart-wrenching testimony from survivors describing gang rape, sexual violations, and the pervasive culture of silence within the military. They've waited years for reforms that have only just now been proposed. Bill C-11 may be a step forward, but it's long overdue and still incomplete. Victims deserve better than being used as political pawns. Conservatives call on this government to finally take responsibility, implement meaningful changes now, ensure the civilian justice system is fully resourced to handle these cases, protect victims from further trauma, and provide them with real justice. To those who have suffered, we see you, we hear you, we stand with you. But to those who have allowed this problem to persist for a decade with political games and cover-ups, the time for excuses is over. Mr. Speaker, our national security depends not only on weapons and strategy, but on the moral strength of our institutions. We owe it to every man, woman in uniform to uphold justice, integrity, and respect. Conservatives will continue to hold this government accountable for its failures and push for real reforms that serve victims, respect due process, and restore trust in our Canadian